Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is the first in a series of 3 webinars focused on unlocking the potential of geospatial data for mining operations. We're very grateful to Picterra, our host, for setting up and supporting the webinars. Picterra work in many different sectors, including mining, and they are a company that does, they have a geospatial AI or a machine learning platform, and they turn geospatial imagery into deep learning models. And you'll find out more about that as we go through the different webinars. First of all, I would like to welcome our featured guest, who is Minister Jinapor. He's from Ghana, and he's the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. He and I both sit on the governing board of Digital Earth Africa, and mining is incredibly important in Ghana and neighbouring countries. So over to you, Samuel, Minister.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you.
Excellent. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And I welcome you to the first in a series of webinars focusing on digital transformation of the mining industry. Well, I've been introduced, but just for emphasis, I'm Samuel A. Jinapor. I'm Minister for Lands and Natural Resources of Ghana and the Member of Parliament for the Damango constituency in the Savannah region of Ghana. I think today we delve into the revolutionary role of geospatial data and artificial intelligence in driving innovation, enhancing productivity, efficiency, and safety in mining operations. The mining industry in Ghana, as you may know, is a very important sector of the national economy of our country. It plays such a significant role and is the leading sector for export receipts for our national economy. And under the distinguished leadership of President of my country, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, we've been working around the clock to make Ghana's mining industry the hub of the mining industry of Africa, where all mining related activities from exploration to downstream production and from research to innovation will be centered. And in so doing, we want to do that in the context of environmental, social, and governance principles, where we adhere to these principles religiously. And to be able to do this, we need data for planning and policy development. With the developments which the world has seen, artificial intelligence powered by geospatial data will play a critical role in this regard. The African mining vision, for example, ladies and gentlemen, stresses the centrality of data, not just for mining operations, but for the entire value chain of the industry and associated sectors. Significantly for us in Ghana, we have intentionally structured our governance architecture to place the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources as the ministry which is responsible for both the mining and the land sector. And it should be very obvious to all of us, because that is the linkage between mining and land is so key. And therefore, we have one ministry which is responsible for the lands and mining sectors of the national economy of Ghana. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have developed a national geospatial policy to promote the use of a wide array of spatial data, information, and services to regulate our lands and natural resources sector. This policy will soon be placed before the Cabinet of Ghana, and once approved, it will give us a solid foundation to promote the use of geospatial data in the mining industry. Today's topic is therefore of great importance to us here in Ghana. And I'm hopeful that at the end of this session, we will all appreciate the potential of geospatial data in dealing with some of the challenges in the mining sector and across the mining value chain. I thank you very much for your attention and to discuss this consequential topic. Let me introduce Mr. Steven Ramage, who is the founder and chief executive officer of the Réseau Consulting. I must add that I serve with him on the board of Digital Earth Africa, an organization that utilizes Earth observations to provide data and translate it into decision-ready information policy for decision-ready information policy makers. We have a lead scientist at Digital Earth Africa in the person of Ms. Lisa-Maria Rebelo. We have an associate professor of our own University of Energy and Natural Resources here in Ghana, where I had the privilege of delivering a lecture last week, Professor Amos T. Kabo-Bah. They will share their insights and experiences on the topic with us, and I will urge all participants to pay key attention and ask the relevant questions at the end of their presentation. With these words, I will call on Steven Ramage to begin the discussion. Mr. Ramage.
Thank you very much, Minister. Greatly appreciate your time and your intervention. And also, I think because this is the first in the series of 3 webinars, I think it's very important that you raise the points around policy and what that means, because policy and regulation are obviously critical going forward, as you mentioned, in many countries around the world where mining's happening, it's underpinning a lot of economic activity, but a lot of environmental impact as well. So thanks again. I understand you have your ministerial duties, so if you need to leave us, that's fine. But thanks again, and I'll see you at the governing board next week.
Very happy to meet you again. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. So I'm just going to we've mentioned briefly Digital Earth Africa. Amos and I are both been part of Digital Earth Africa for several years, for probably 4 or 5 for both of us. And I now want to just hand to Lisa, who can talk a little bit about what Digital Earth Africa is, and maybe just explain the value and usefulness of geospatial AI for Digital Earth Africa before Amos and I sort of start to chat about a few other of the topics. So over to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So Digital Earth Africa is really very much focused on some of the aspects that the Minister mentioned, the importance of data and really trying to ensure that we're providing the information needed to drive data-based decision-making across the African continent. So the program Digital Earth Africa was established about 3+ years ago, 2019, with the vision of providing a routine, reliable, and importantly, operational service that covered the entire African continent. So using Earth observation, satellite images to deliver decision-ready products, and really with the view to enabling a wide range of users to address key challenges and importantly, to develop an ecosystem for innovation across sectors, so going beyond just the data. So the program has operated over the last few years according to a number of key principles. And these underpin everything that we do. The data from Digital Earth Africa are all free, they're open and interoperable. And what this does is it removes barrier to use and reuse of the data. We provide operational services, so these cover the entire continent and can be technically sustained so that people everywhere across all 54, 55 countries have the opportunity to benefit. It also means that when a product, a service, a workflow is developed in one location, one country, one region, it can be easily scaled to elsewhere across the continent. Accountability and transparency. We have a governance structure that ensures that Digital Earth Africa delivers to African needs, and diversity and inclusion, harnessing the power of diverse communities and fostering collaborations. So following the launch of the program 3 years ago, the first 2 phases, which focused on feasibility and then subsequently setting up the infrastructure and architecture. So this last phase, phase 2, which is actually completing this month, is focused on the idea that reliable and timely access to what we refer to as analysis-ready data, so pre-processed satellite imagery, was key to the sustainability of the program. And these data are provided by space agencies around the world and trusted data providers through public dataset programs. So what we do is we archive these through Amazon Web Services in Cape Town, and we make them available through the Digital Earth Africa platform through various interfaces, a map for browsing for the less technical users, a developer and analytical environment, a Python-based sandbox with access to cloud compute for all our users. So then, as the Digital Earth Africa team, what we do is we use these data streams as input to derive continental scale services. And these are related to, for example, the presence of water, vegetation condition and structure, amongst others. And we produce these on an operational basis for the entire continent. And these are based on moderate high to moderate resolution data, so 10 to 30 meter spatial resolution. We also provide interfaces in both English and French, and go beyond just being a data provider by also supporting an extensive learning platform with training materials, self-paced courses, live sessions for anyone to drop in on a weekly basis, once a week in French, the subsequent week in English, and a help desk. So the program is much more than just a data platform. And as an African-led Pan-African program, we work with implementing partners who together operate across currently 43 countries and provide capability, capacity building, and engagement with a growing user base. So really, for us, the importance here is on not only ensuring that everything we do is demand-driven, so all of the services, all of the data we provide and produce is demand-driven, but also that the analytical workflows and the value-added services have been co-designed with our end users on the continent. So we have a library of workflows with machine learning routinely integrated. These currently address over 100 different thematic areas and case studies, one of which is mining. And I just mentioned a report that was undertaken by the World Economic Forum that estimated that unregulated gold mining across the continent has caused US, I think it's $9 billion of total economic damage. And so at Digital Earth Africa, we've collaborated with partners in the continent to develop and validate methods that help to identify areas where unregulated mining may occur. And these workflows and data streams can, of course, be taken in and then replicated in other countries. So I'll just conclude by saying that the Digital Earth Africa satellite images, our derived continental services, and the analytical workflows, all of which are open source and freely available to users, can help with the discovery, but also the planning, the governance, and really the transparency of resource developments. And by doing this, benefiting African governments, communities, as well as resource developers and industry. So, Stephen, with that introduction, I'm going to hand over to you for the specifics.
Thank you very much. I presume, Lisa, if anyone wants to see more information or your slides, everything's publicly and freely available.
Yes.
Great. So thanks again. So Amos, you've been waiting patiently. I think one of the things we want to think about is, there are various types of mining organizations. There are major corporations, mid-tier producers, junior exploration companies. I mean, the minister talked about, going from exploration to production. And each of these organizations faces a unique set of challenges. And so it should be in this context that we see opportunities for geospatial artificial intelligence, or I'll just call it geospatial AI from now on, to help also what the minister referred to as digital transformation, or let's call it transformative change. So in Africa, when discussing mining, or even in other continents, attention is often drawn to mineral mining. But there's also construction-related mining, which is significant and which we should also consider. So one of the things I guess people talk a lot about is actionable insights. And I think that's also what the minister was saying. He said we need data and insights, and he mentioned about national level policy that they're hoping to approve, where geospatial data tools and services can support what they're trying to do. And so in this context, it could be things like predictive analytics for potential mineral deposits, enhancing operational efficiency, improving safety by identifying risks, or I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, looking at regulatory compliance. So as you can see on the screen here, we have a number of those industry challenges that are faced. And I'm hoping that the audience, this resonates with the audience. So Amos, what's your view, since you've been working in Ghana and internationally on this huge topic?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, and I'm very happy that our Honorable Minister was able to join and to also emphasize some key points. I think one of the key issues he has clearly mentioned, and which I also want to emphasize, is that data is gold. We are mining gold, but data is also gold because it helps us to really understand how much has been gone or how much has been mined, and how do we put value on that. You just mentioned the issue of the different types of mining. Now, if I refer to the Ghana case, of course, you have the large corporations, and of course, these large corporations or medium companies usually get the requisite licenses that they need to get from the government, and in one way or the other, they are regulated. But we are, over the last decade, we are seeing that there is a large chunk of others that are mining, but not with the requisite, requisite licenses. In Ghana, we talk about illegal mining, and sometimes we call it galamsey. And this is obviously affecting a lot of our resources. And of course, as everyone attests to it, mining helps us to get revenue. And for Ghana, for example, that contributes roughly, is variable, but roughly above 6% of our GDP. But at the same time, we also have other critical sectors like the cocoa industry that is also contributing almost 5% of our GDP that is being affected as a result of those unregulated issues. So how do we come to a midway without bringing in, let me put it in quotes, any political idea that this is happening and we're not bringing about some level of transparency to ensure that if a certain company A is mining, at a certain point, the government regulatory body is able to see that company A is doing a certain mining, is covering a certain area, they're able to restore a certain amount of area. This is something that the company themselves can assess using the geospatial AI tools that we are talking about here. But at the same time, the regulatory body should be able to assess that. So that is why I strongly feel that the discussion we are having here is important because it will help, first of all, private companies that are already licensed to take up some of these tools so that they can really enhance their work. And one thing that we have not mentioned is that it's not just about assessing how much you have mined. There are also the fact that there are safety issues about even the workers, which is also very critical, that this geospatial can also help with that, because the loss of human life, we are not able to quantify that in terms of economic terms. So these aspects are very useful. Yes.
So Amos, if you look at the last challenge, which is around mitigate climate change risk, and it talks about SDGs, responsible business practice. The minister talked about environmental, social, and governance principles, ESG. Is what you're saying is that you believe that this approach, this geospatial AI, can also help with ESG?
Exactly. That is what I'm trying to really address, because at the end of the day, we need to work towards, and I'm also happy to mention I'm co-chair for land degradation neutrality, whereby we want to ensure that every parcel of land at the end of the day has the value that it needs in order to help us build and live sustainably. So if we are mining a certain parcel of land, at the end of the day, we should have the necessary mitigation measures in order to restore it back to its natural stage. And so that is why it is very important for us to, at every time, be able to monitor this, if possible, in real time, so that we can be able to know whether are we going off guard our SDGs, and if we are going off guard, what do we need to do in order to bring back, put us back in balance?
So I think this slide here, which your colleagues at Picterra have kindly put together, I think in terms of looking at the life cycle of activities within mining, that relates strongly to what you were saying. But what are other what are other kind of areas where having the ability to monitor? What else would it help with? Because you've talked about like land use planning, like you're part of the land degradation activity, but are there other things maybe like water, or because this life cycle cuts across many different areas, so what else is relevant in that context?
Thank you very much. I think I want to refer to the last picture here, then I come to the other sectors that are critical. You see that you have closure and reclamation. Right now in Ghana, I think that is one of our biggest challenges, because mining is conducted, but what happens? What do we do about it? So, and sometimes it comes with issues of conflicts, because the consignment which was given and later what maybe the company A have in mind, there is some differences. And to address that issue, it means we need to employ the issue of geospatial AI. Now, the last decade have also seen that for the unregulated aspect of mining, it affects our water resources. And in Ghana, most of our water supply is coming from our surface waters. So if you, by the unregulated methods of mining, then you have pollution of your water resources. And of course, this adds up to the cost of the water that people get at the end of the day, because it means you have to pay higher for trying to treat your water and what have you. So it means there is a need for us to consider, and I think that it will be very essential going forward. And I'm happy our minister just mentioned that Ghana is seriously considering, because this is a very important issue in the country, that as a recommendation, mining companies or those involved in mining in whichever way as part of the licensing should be considered to consider the issue of integrating geospatial AI into their operations, so that at any point in time, there is some kind of transparency in understanding the whole value chain.
Amos, when the minister spoke, he said that the Department of Mining and Land is purposely connected. Given what you've just said about other areas, how does water then, is that part of the policy? I mean, you might not know, but is that part of the policy that's waiting to be approved?
I had a glance of this policy, and this policy, what it's trying to do is to ensure that data is available across the sectors. So ensuring that, for example, air observation data is uniformly shared. Currently, as a country, we still have fragments. You may have, for example, Water Resources Commission is having some set of data that may not be available to Lands Commission, that may not be available to Minerals Commission. So what the policy is trying to seek to do is to ensure that we have more like a central data portal, whereby we are able to see all these variants when it comes to the monitoring and the management of our natural resources. By so doing, then we can have a unified is a way of trying to address the issues of our management of our natural resources.
Okay, great. So if we look at, I guess the work that Picterra does, they're covering, I guess, more or less what you've been talking about here. You mentioned safety at the beginning. We talked a bit about digital transformation. Didn't really talk about this sort of balancing. Well, I guess you talked a bit about sustainability, but what about this profitability? I guess it comes back to the insights, those actionable insights that hopefully can help companies not just work sustainably but also profitably. Is there anything you want to add on the profitability or the asset management side of things?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the sustainability and the profitability, they go in the way they go hand in hand. And where I want to really tackle on is that one of the things geospatial AI does is to really bring what I call a governance transparent way of looking at the things on the table. So that if I am mining company A and my concession has been given, I'm supposed to mine 30 hectares, and at the end of the day, I need to restore that back, then especially in space and time, I am able to tell the government, please, or the regulators, that this is what I have done and this is what I have reclaimed, so that in terms of the taxes that company needs to pay, there is no ambiguity. This is very critical because usually there's a lot of conflict between the regulators and the companies as to the taxes because it is not clear in space and time how the operations have been. At the other side of it too, it also helps government that is also trying to recoup some revenue from side companies to also be able to understand what taxes are reasonable and what strategies need to put in place to ensure that one sector like mining does not collapse another critical sector, because you need the two sectors in order to drive the economy. And at the same time, we want to ensure that the mining does not also result in public health issues, because if your water bodies are polluted, it means there's also going to be public health crisis. So in doing that, you are trying to put all these dots together in such a way that public health issues are manageable and all the sectors are operating without too much conflict and collapse on another sector.
Great. So I just want to talk here. I mean, if you look here, you can see what Picterra actually do. They have this geospatial machine learning platform, and they have these different, you can see examples of detectors or custom built models. And so they can detect objects, patterns, and change. And so these are all, if you can see here, these are custom built ones that are applicable within the mining and other related sectors. If you go to the next one, please. I guess I just want to. If anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll get to them in a second. But I think that one of the key things is that for the platform, it's a low code or a no code platform, which is something that is, in the last, well, I don't know, probably in my experience, it feels like the last 5 years. It might even be longer, but I know Picterra has been doing that for the last 5 to 6 years. And so the number of training data sets, the fact that they've worked with any types of imagery, I think that's a real strong point of the work that they're doing. So I'm not going to go through these bullet points. People can get a copy of the slides, they can read for themselves. But I think this first session, we just wanted to talk a bit about some of the governance and the sustainability and the policy and regulatory aspects that Ghana is one country. Amos is from the university there, the minister's from the university, but there are scores of countries all doing the same thing, and mining companies and these different types of organizations we talked about at the beginning are all have significant investments there, and they all have a number of different things like around net zero or around climate change, as well as around regulatory and other local compliance that they need to think about. So hopefully you got some ideas from the chat from the two of us. We have a question here which says, do you see a role for the geospatial industry data standards in breaking down some of the data silos we mentioned across the life cycle? Does the question make sense to you, Amos?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. For you to break down the data silos, there has to be some kind of a national, let me call it national direction, and that comes with some kind of a policy that needs to address the issues of having a unified national system that allows people the freedom to access such information. Currently, in the case of Ghana, we don't have that. So individuals may have national data which is sitting on their laptops or computers. Individual institutions may have some sort of data which is lying down, which is not shared. So that is why Ghana decided to push very hard to have the national space science policy, which is supposed to break these gaps. But I must also mention that within Africa, there are quite a number of countries that have established even the space agencies that are supposed to provide more like overarching coordination or ensuring that Earth observations, data, and products are shared uniformly within the country. And my hope is that with the launch of the African Space Agency, that will further push the African Union member countries, to all do similar and ensure that data which is produced in space and time is made available for the public so that the citizens can understand, especially when it comes to the issues of mining, the citizens can understand what exactly the companies are doing. And at the end of the day, there can be some transparency and there can be some level of, let me call it, collaborative efforts in how we use our natural resources for sustainable development.
And I think there's also an element of there are new standards like cloud optimized geotiffs and spatial temporal asset catalogs. I think those standards that are also coming through as sort of de facto standards will play a big role as people want to start to look for catalogs and they want to find ways of categorizing and searching for and having access to these data. And then, as you say, like the Africa Space Agency, new entities that are coming through will take on a lot more responsibility around those emerging standards, as well as other long-standing things like ISO and OGC. I don't know if Lisa's still about. There's one on, could you give us an insight into how Picterra could potentially integrate and collaborate with Digital Earth Africa, particularly in the context of data cubes? Are you still there, Lisa? No. I mean, in terms of what could be done, I mean, the data cubes are based on time series Earth observations from, I think, about last 30 years. Is that right, Amos?
About last 30 years since the sun is, I think, Landsat, so since 72, so we have quite a lot of time series data.
So it should just be another feed into the platform in terms of types of data, and then create some training data. I don't think it should be, I don't think it's a particularly hard thing to do. But we can answer that separately as well. Hang on, there's some more things at the bottom. I just have to scroll down. And sorry, that last question was from Jez Cosman, the one about the industry data standards. And there's one about how do we go about integrating geospatial data along the mining value chain? How far is Digital Earth Africa? So I guess that question is, how far what progress has Digital Earth Africa made in terms of delivering? I don't know, Amos, the work that you did with Digital Earth Africa and Ghana and mining, how far in terms of that mining life cycle is covered with the work that you've done?
I think so far, the aspect which has been handled so far is just the assessment of how much area is being mined over time, especially the unregulated ones. It's been looking at generally the small-scale mining and which aspects have been mined and how are these affecting water resources. So there is still a lot of work to be done to have the full engagement of the mining companies so that the full life cycle assessment or analysis can be done.
Okay, that was from Mashiani. This one is from Bernard Ochere, and he says, will the geospatial data include water consumption, water demand, and water footprint?
We already have geospatial data which is available in different ways. You have to integrate it with some other social data which is already available for the water sector. But if we are now looking at, for example, the impacts of mining activities on this on the water sector, looking at a different way, that will require some bit of work to know, but it is doable.
Okay, so look, I want to wrap up there. People can contact us. We can either, if they have a technical question, we can put them in touch with the appropriate people at Picterra. If they want to speak to you about the work you've done at the university or with Digital Earth Africa, they can also speak with you, Amos. Or if they want to speak to Lisa about what they're doing more broadly at Digital Earth Africa, they can get in touch with her. So I just want to thank everyone for joining. I guess this was a teaser to sort of set up the series of webinars. I want to thank Picterra for making it possible. And hopefully people have an idea. We can share any of the slides anyone wants. Lisa shared in the chat what she had. And then you have all the information about how to reach Picterra on here as well. So someone asked about where they can find information about the product and about pricing for Picterra, and all of that is available on their website. I know because I've been on to have a look myself. So thank you very much, and look forward to meeting some of you on the next webinars. And thanks again for joining.